Hello and welcome to the Pokemon Draft Cup power rankings sent by me. Um, I apologise for the low production quality. If indeed there is low production quality, but what can you expect from a man who would only put himself 13th in his own power rankings for the Draft Cup he is in? Anyway, as you can see, here is the order I've decided on. This is purely based on the teams you drafted, not on the skill of the player. For example, I know Rudy is a very good Pokemon player, but he did draft a strange team, shall we say? So it's not a comment on you as a player. Um, I'm kind of excited to see what Victor can do with his team, even though I put it at 16th. Um, I'm still kind of excited to see what he can do with it because it's by no means a final. Like this by no means determines anything. But so I've got Carl at the top, Carl the Crusader. I think his team's incredibly scary, and I think it was pretty hard pressed to separate the top four. And I'm also a big fan of Lewis's team, so we'll just move on. Look at each team, and I'll try and explain why I put them in this order. So yeah, we'll start off with Carl. The main Pokemon, or the star name obviously is Zygarde, but Mega Gyarados also an incredibly scary setup sweeper, and he has very difficult to stop setup because Gyarados and Zygarde are both extremely bulky and hard to kill with just one or two moves. Zygarde in draft obviously can run Yachi Berry, it can run the Fairy Resist Berry. I think that exists, it might not do. But it can easily take a hit, it can run Weakness Policy sets, it has Dragon Dance, it has Coil, it has Toxic, Substitute, Protect, like it has all these sets. And Thousand Arrows is just absolutely disgusting, there's a reason it's banned from OU, Zygarde that is. But if you couple that with the fact that he has both Virizion and Meowstic, which could both set up double screens, Meowstic with Prankster double screens. He also has Omastar, which is surprisingly bulky, has Shell Smash, can also be ran as a triple hazard lead, which is nice for a hyper offense style team. He has a very strong Dragon Fairy Steel Core. Obviously, Zygarde being the dragon. Metagross is extremely bulky. Quite versatile as well. Has a decent enough move pool. And then the Fairy being Granbull. For some reason, Granbull is always a tier 5, and I'm not really sure why. It's very, very decent Pokemon in draft. Has Intimidate. Normal just Fairy typing is very powerful. And has decent coverage as well, which is one of the reasons he's gone for a Z move. On that, as well as Omastar, which I think is a great Z user. Shell Smash, Z Hydro Pump. I think Oko's a Rotom Wash from full health, which is pretty nice. Virizion as well. Excited to see what he can do with that because I'm not really sure. Most of his mons can be run either offensively or defensively, as I put there. For example, Buzzwole can be ran as a defensive set, Reuniclus works as a defensive Pokemon, it even has Regenerator, which often gets overlooked in favour of Magic Guard. Zygarde, obviously very bulky. Tornadus has like Prankster and can run a bit of HP. Omastar has really high base defense. Virizion can be ran as either. Granbull can be run as either. Even Mega Gyarados used to have a defensive, like especially defensive set. So there's a lot of versatility there. On the negative side, as you can see, he doesn't really have anything to defog. I believe Tornadus gets a Prankster defog, which is nice. But outside of that, he is really struggling to get rid of enemy Stealth Rocks and Spikes. He doesn't have too many weaknesses to it. Obviously, Tornadus, his only defogger is weak to rocks. And Blacephalon is weak to rocks. Gyarados, before Mega Evolving, is weak to rocks. So maybe there's more than I thought. It's not the fastest team. Outside of Blacephalon and Tornadus, I guess Virizion's pretty quick as well. There isn't most of the Pokemon are under base 100 speed. Zygarde obviously the fastest. Metagross is kind of slow. Omastar before a Shell Smash is very slow. So before setup it isn't the fastest team, but not sure how much that'll be an issue. And you do have Pokemon like Blacephalon who can quite easily run Scarf. However, Blacephalon is just a terrible Pokemon. It is quite weak to powerful Volt Turn. He doesn't have much in the way of controlling momentum. So he doesn't have too many U-turners or Volt switchers. There's no parting shot. There's no memento even, so it's kind of an issue if you can get some volt switches and some U-turns. Obviously, he does have a ground type, so he can switch in Zygarde to the electric moves, but most Pokemon that are carrying Volt Switch will carry Hidden Power Ice or Ice Beam or something along those lines. So yeah, that's why I've got Carl up top. I think it's incredibly difficult to stop his Dragon Fairy Steel Core and extremely difficult to stop Mega Gyarados under screens. We'll see how well that translates. He does have some issues, and maybe those will be exploited, and I'll look like an idiot. We have Fabian next. Fabian the Drunken. Very balanced but extremely powerful team. I love the Terrakion pickup. Xurkitree is incredibly deadly as well. Mega Charizard X is probably the most solid win con in draft. When you know what you have to break for it to win, it's an extremely powerful Pokemon. So yeah, we've got the double defog with Tornadus and Rotom Wash. So he has two pretty reliable ways to get rid of Stealth Rocks. And he does have good momentum control. Tornadus is exceptional getting momentum, as is Rotom Wash, because it takes most hits on the physical side. Volt switches out of there and gives you the momentum. Those are two of the best momentum grabbers, probably in OU and certainly in draft. I think Mesprit gets U-turn as well. Amoonguss is a bit of a momentum sponge, but Regenerator means it can just keep coming, switching in and out, in and out. The three scary setup sweepers, obviously Terrakion can run Dual Dance, or depending on matchup, just one. Xurkitree, although he hasn't given Xurkitree a Z, which I thought he would. So it becomes slightly less scary when it can't boost its speed, but obviously can just run a Choice Scarf. So it can run Tail Glow into more defensive teams. Mega Charizard X goes without saying, probably the best Dragon Dancer in draft. And with the double defog, he can pretty much ensure it comes in safely. Barbarical as well, with a Z move, shouldn't be slept on. So he has a lot of setup there. But with the core of Rotom Wash, Porygon and Amoonguss, and in fact Tornadus as well, with its Regenerate. He has the double Regenerated core. He's got Porygon 2, which refuses to die. Marwile is pretty handy defensively as well. And Rotom Wash, as I say, a defensive pivot. He does have that very solid core that he can just pick two of his more offensive mons that he thinks are going to smash you. And yeah, he has that. On the other side of the momentum debate, he doesn't have an electric immunity. It's not necessarily a massive issue, but it does mean teams can stack Volt Switch against him. If somebody has Tapu Koko, they can just Volt Switch for free on him, because he doesn't have a Volt Absorber either. I don't think Xurkitree gets Beast Boost, obviously. So yeah, that could potentially be an issue. He can be cock blocked quite hard by unaware mons, because he has so many setup sweepers. A Quagsire can be a bit of an issue, or an unaware Clefable, something like that. A Pukumuku. He does have ways to deal with, for example, Quagsire. Xurkitree gets Energy Ball, I believe. Tornadus gets Grass Knots, and he obviously has an Amoonguss. But yeah, he might have to come up with a different way of beating those teams, and he could be predictable. Mega Charizard X it's quite obvious what it's going to do, right? Everyone knows what Mega Charizard X is going to do. Whether or not you can stop it is another issue, but it could potentially be a bit obvious what the game plan is with Mega Charizard X and Terrakion. It's up to Fabian to keep it creative. Redmer. Now this is, I really considered putting this as the best team. I'm really scared of this team. It's super flexible with, especially with Azelf as a Z user. That thing is really scary. Base 115 attack and special attack, I believe, and it's super quick. He's got, like, Tapu Koko can obviously run a variety of different sets. He can run physical, special, specs, band, scarf. You can't run Z in this, obviously, but Nature's Madness is a handy one. It can run Taunt, it can Defog, it can do so much in draft. Obviously with Hawlucha as well, pretty obvious threat. It is a fast as fuck team as well. Like Coco, exceptionally quick. Hawlucha in electric terrain, really quick. Azelf is quick. Noivern is really quick. Mega Sharpedo has speed boost. This is a really, really fast team. And your normal way, like setup sweepers, are going to struggle against the Hawlucha, against the Sharpedo. Your Scarfer is going to have to be electric quick if you want to outspeed some of these Pokemon. And even if you do, he has Klefki and Mamoswine who have priority of some sort. Klefki as well has screens, so you can get screens up with like Coco and Klefki both have double screens. And both very good setters of screens as well. So he has a lot going for it offensively. The two premier sweepers I talk of, Hawlucha obviously, and Mega Sharpedo in draft is really, really scary. When it can tailor its set to beat what you have, obviously in OU it can't run all of the moves it wants to run. It wants to run Protect, it wants to run Crunch, it wants to run Waterfall, it wants to run Psychic Fangs, it wants to run Ice Fang, it wants to run, I think it gets Thunder Fang as well. And it can't obviously run all of these on the ladder, but in draft, when you see what your opponent has beforehand, Mega Sharpedo, I should say, is a serious, serious threat. And I think it is one of the better. It's one of those Megas that's a lot better in draft than it is on the ladder. I also think the Mamoswine pickup is really nice. Mamoswine beats a lot of the things that Coco and Hawlucha might struggle with. I did have some examples, but I can't think of any of them right now. But essentially, ground ice coverage is incredible, right? Say, for example, bulky electric, like maybe a Zapdos. I know especially defensive Zapdos could be an issue for that core. Mamoswine absolutely smashes it with Icicle Crash. Ground ice coverage beats nearly everything in the game. It has I think it has the most. It's super effective against the most types, or something like that. And the coverage is just incredible. And it's really, really nice for Coco and Hawlucha. It also offers a banded Ice Shard if needed. And also, with Mamoswine, because it's not that quick, if an opponent does bring a Sticky Webs or Trick Room team to beat it, Mamoswine is like a nice failsafe on that because it is so bulky and it isn't quick that you can bring that if you think the opponent's going to bring a more speed control team. So I think that's nice. Noivern is just overkill because you've already got the quickest team in the league. I'm not sure you needed that, but that thing can hurt. Arcanine and Serena, it offers decent type coverage. You didn't have those types before. I will say, you are weak to Trick Room, or like a Sticky Web type team can be an issue for you, or something that just doesn't care about speed. Team is pretty frail all the way through. Mamoswine's kind of bulky. Hawlucha, after its seed, can be kind of bulky. Klefki isn't like frail as such, but it's not the most bulky Pokemon. Silvali's pretty bulky, but I'm not sure you want to be using that as a primary defensive wall. Licky similar. While I do have that type chart showing what types he doesn't have, he obviously does have the Silvally, so he can cover those types if needed. But I think you should always leave Silvally to be as versatile as possible, and not try and pigeonhole it into saying, I want it to be this, I want it to be this. Like, you just want to have it and use it whenever. I think Silvally gets Defog, which is handy because his team does struggle a little bit with removing rocks. It obviously has Coco, who can Defog, but you don't really want to be wasting a move slot too often on that. And Serena gets Rapid Spin, but it's not the most reliable. Solid Grass typing is quite easily abusable, and it isn't the quickest or the bulkiest. But it does hit really, really hard, surprisingly hard. Moving on, we have Jake the Child Snatcher Smith. So his team is the only one in this which has perfect type coverage. He has something of every type, and I think that is extremely handy in draft because you don't have any glaring weaknesses. If you need a stab psychic move, for example, say the opponent's got a Toxapex or has a couple of poison types for some reason, you have that stab psychic move you can just run through the team. Um, and it also means he shouldn't have too many overlapping weaknesses. He also has the double speed boost mons, which is just disgusting. Combuskin and Scolipede both have speed boost, and both pretty deadly if it gets to sort of like a 2-on-2 situation at the end of the game. He also has a Shell Smasher in Minior, who is quite difficult to stop actually. A lot of people forget that you can't just status it when it's in the like Meteor stage or whatever it is. So you do have to be careful playing around Minior, but it's also quite difficult to use because of that. And he has a lot of healing wish. Both Latias and Togekiss have healing wish. Latias has both screens as well, I think, so he has that option. Manaphy as a Z user is a lot scarier than just normal Manaphy because it can run Z Rain Dance, which makes it a serious threat, especially to bulkier teams. So I think Jake's team will work quite well as a counter to some of the bulkier teams in this because he has the Manaphy. He has Kingler as well, who's a really underrated breaker. That thing has like base 130 attack or something with sheer force. It hurts. It really hurts. On the defensive side, he has Mega Steelix, which is incredibly bulky, but I think quite easily abusable. Latias is pretty bulky. Manaphy can be run defensively. Togekiss is pretty bulky, but it is actually more offensive than Jake normally builds. It's got a lowish BST is what I dubbed it as, but my point is that even his top end picks, Manaphy, which is kind of all rounder, Scolipede has pretty low stats and useful because of its ability and move pool. Togekiss isn't exactly standout. Like there's not a Kyurem Black, there's not a Hooper Unbound, there's no Kartana, there's no like broken stats on there. It's all I don't know. It could be an issue that his team isn't massively bulky or massively powerful outside of the utility it brings. He has a bit of an ice weakness. Obviously, he has Manaphy and Kingler who resist, and Combuskin resists, but do you really want to switch him in? But Minior, Delmise, Togekiss, Latias, those are that's 4 different Pokemon weak to ice. I know that's quite common, but that's something he will have to play around because his only resists are Kingler, Manaphy, Combuskin. Combuskin doesn't want to be taking any hits. And both Manaphy and Kingler can be hit super effective by Freeze Dry if that's an issue. But also, the most powerful ice moves are going to come from stuff like Kyurem Black, or it's Fusion Bolt, or a lot of Pokemon that are going to use ice coverage are going to have an electric move, or it's going to be Freeze Dry. So there is a bit of a weakness there to exploit. It's a bit of a jack of all trades team. There isn't there isn't like a central Pokemon that is like the team is built around and can really like mesh the team together. You know what I mean? Like there's no when you're picking, you put Zygarde on it, you put Mega Charizard X on the left hand side of the screen. For this, not so much. There's not a really Manaphy is kind of scary, but I'm not frightened of a Manaphy when I'm team building. We have Luis Romero. Probably butchered that. His team is really damn scary. I've put him as the dark horse because I think this team is really well built, and I think it's a really really scary team, and I'm kind of interested to see how he does because I think this team could go really far. Kyurem Black is absolutely disgusting. I hate this Pokemon. You cannot switch into it. If it gets a free turn, it gets a free kill. That's pretty much how it works. In Draft, that is no different. It is his Z-Mon as well. ICM Z. There's almost no point running any other Z move. I've looked into it before. If ICM Z isn't resisted, it's pretty much the most powerful attack in the game. Like it absolutely obliterates anything that wants to switch in. Kyurem Black Heatran Keldeo is a really, really solid 3 Pokemon core. Like that is really powerful. It's got good type coverage, good power. Heatran is bulky, Kyurem Black is bulky, Keldeo can take some punishment as well. But it's not even particularly slow. Keldeo is pretty quick. Kyurem has a good speed tier, given it has like 170 base attack or something. So yeah, he has that triple tier 1 threat. And I think that's a really, really strong core to build a team around. He also picked Wormadam, which just shows that he's a dangerous, dangerous individual. And I've absolutely no idea what it's going to bring. But on a more serious point, he does have 4 different Stealth Rock users. Nidoqueen also gets Toxic Spikes. Crustle gets Spikes, and I think Toxic Spikes as well. I could be wrong on that one. So he has a lot of different ways to set up hazards. It's also an extremely fast team, but you don't really, when you look at it, you see Kyurem and Heatran, you think, oh, it's probably not that quick. But then he has Keldeo's pretty quick. Slurpuff has Unburden. Mega Pidgeot is very quick, and Jolteon obviously is extremely quick. So there is a lot of speed there. So he does have the speed to back up Pokemon like Heatran and like Kyurem, who need a bit more, who aren't quick and will need things to outspeed the things that outspeed them. So yeah, his hazard removal isn't brilliant. On the other hand, I think Mega Pidgeot gets defog. Outside of that, I think Decidueye might, but it's not the most reliable removal of hazards, so he's probably going to have to get up his own to counteract that. Thankfully, he can do that quite easily. It isn't the most defensively robust. He does have the speed, and it's like a bulky offense team, but if you can break down the Heatran, which doesn't have reliable recovery, you can break down the Keldeo without reliable recovery, you can break down the Nidoqueen, doesn't have reliable recovery, you can wear this team down with a war of attrition. Type Null is extremely bulky, but doesn't really offer too much outside of that. Crustle is bulky, but isn't really a defensive Pokemon. Decidueye, I'm still not 100% sure what that Pokemon does. So it can be worn down in a war of attrition. There isn't too much in the way of recovery. And as good as Heatran is in OU, and it is absolutely disgusting in OU, it's a lot easier to counter team in draft, I think. So that's something you have to be mindful of. It's a lot easier to just bring Earthquake on everything, although I tend to in OU anyway because Heatran pisses me off. But I think it's easier to deal with in draft when you know it's coming. Whitney. Whitney claimed herself that she found team building to be the hardest part of the game, but somehow she managed to get Landorus and Celesteela. Both of those Pokemon should be going in the first round. Somehow, Whitney got both. And I mean, that in itself makes this team like probably a top 10 team, because Celesteela, I think is one of the best Pokemon in draft. I've had it myself in draft. I've seen other people use it, and it always puts in a shit ton of work. It's a really, really dangerous Pokemon. Landorus is the most used Pokemon in OU for a reason. So versatile. It offers both Stealth Rock and Defog. It has U-Turn for momentum control. Its Earthquake absolutely wrecks. And in draft, you can obviously counter team a little bit more. You don't have to run Hidden Power Ice or the Landorus, for example. And just those base stats with Intimidate will always be useful. Tyranitar, an interesting pickup. Whitney doesn't really have any way of abusing the sand. But she's also not really hurt by it. There isn't too much in the way of there isn't too much that would hate the sand being up. Tyranitar also is pretty versatile. It has loads and loads of coverage. You can run the standard band set. You can run specs in draft. You can run like Choppleberry, Assault Vest. It is incredibly fat, but it is kind of slow, and it does have that 4 times weakness to fighting. So you do have to kind of be mindful of that and play around it. It has the GOAT, Mudsdale, probably the greatest tier 5 Pokemon, probably the best Pokemon overall in draft. I absolutely love Mudsdale. I think it's a really, really underrated pick. Assault Vest set, just pure ground typing is really, really useful for a defensive Pokemon. You see that in things like Capoudon. Obviously, Landorus has the flying type with it, but ground type is a really useful defensive type, I think. And Mudsdale has really high base HP. It also has really high base attack, which shouldn't be slept on. Choice band sets really do hurt. If you can get it in, it really, really will power through teams. And if you can use Mudsteel to break things for Landorus or vice versa, they will share a lot of the same issues in terms of breaking teams down, so they can obviously break for each other. The good offensive core I talked about: Gengar, Me and Shout, Espeon as your tier 2, tier 3, tier 3. Really good coverage between those. Obviously, Ghost Fighting Psychic covers a lot of the Pokemon you want to be dealing with, especially for Tyranitar. Gengar, Me and Shout, Espeon also extremely quick, which does cover up the speed weaknesses you would have with Landorus, Celestine, and Tyranitar. You also do have the sticky webs in Araquanid to deal with that. So you can run more offensive Landorus sets with webs, and you can have a field day. So hazard removal is a bit of a weakness for this team. You do have Espeon to bounce back rocks, but I don't think that's a reliable strategy. You do have Defog Landorus, but you are giving up a move slot on maybe the best Pokemon in the draft. And also, I don't think Landorus is a great defogger because it lacks reliable recovery. It's much better as a rock setter because it forces the switches. And it can punish Pokemon that want to defog on it. There's a lot of overlapping types, what with Landorus and Mudsdale, Tyranitar and Houndoom, Mega Banette and Gengar. You do have an issue there where you can sort of be ran through by something with like 2 moves. There's no Fairy or Dragon. Obviously, one of the cores everyone looks for is a Fairy, Dragon, Steel core. You only have the Steel. There's no Fairy or Dragon, which, again, isn't necessarily an issue. You can play around that, but it is definitely worth keeping in mind. I also think Mega Banette is kind of a weird pickup, just because I think it's a strange Pokemon. I keep trying to use that thing, and it just kind of doesn't work for me. Maybe you've got something planned with it that I haven't seen, but I look forward to it. Coming next, we have Alexi Diaz, who is known as the Delayed because it did take us a while for him. It did take him a while to get his picks through, but when they did come through, kind of dangerous. But there's kind of some issues with this team that I have. I'm sure it will do fine because Alexi's really, really fucking good. But you do have Excadrill and Stoutland, very reliable win cons. They really quick. Excadrill especially really, really hurts with Swords Dance sets, Life Orb and Iron Head, Earthquake, Rock Slide. Not really a whole lot you can do about that. It also is a very reliable spinner, which is nice. Really, really bulky team. Blissey, everyone knows. Everyone knows how disgusting that Pokemon is. Hippowdon is really, really one of the more irritating Pokemon to deal with. I really just think Excadrill, Hippowdon, Stoutland as an offensive core is more than enough, and then you just have like Forretress, Sigalith, Mega Slowbro, Hippowdon, Tapu Bulu. Like, these are really, really bulky Pokemon, and he's not an easy team to break down, to counter team, because he just does have so much in the way of defensive utility. Forretress has Stealth Rock, Rapid Spin, Spikes, and Toxic Spikes. It also has Momentum Control with Volt Switch and Explosion. It's a one Pokemon hazard control. It can be shut down quite easily. Obviously has glaring weaknesses, but in terms of what it can bring to a team, it has so much. It's double rapid spin as well. Like, this team has amazing hazard control, which is one of the reasons this team is good. It would probably be higher if it didn't have very little on the special attacking side. Like a good physical wall can shut down a lot of this team. He has Magmortar and Mega Slowbro, Alola Ninetales, but there's really not that much to be worried about. Also, one of the issues I have is that his 2 biggest picks are Tapu Bulu and Excadrill. Excadrill obviously wants to be in the sand, spamming Earthquakes till the sun comes down, but grassy terrain will weaken those Earthquakes. He does need to be careful with that. I'm sure he'll be able to play around it, but it is a little bit annoying when you come to build the team. If he doesn't have the sand up at all times, this team is pretty slow. Obviously, he is more than likely to have the sand up when he wants it. So it's not too much of an issue, but it isn't the quickest team. It can be destroyed by if you can manipulate the weather, you can sort of really hurt this team. Um, yeah, I think that basically covers it. But this team will still do well because it has Excadrill and Hippowdon, and then Stoutland as well. Like this team will, if it's well built, which it will be, it will do well. But I think there are a lot of issues with this team. Not a lot, but there are some pretty big issues with this team. Chauncey, the old school Latimer, so cool because I think he has 4 Gen 1 mons, Tentacruel, Zapdos, oh maybe it's just the 3, and Marowak, obviously a lowland, but there's a couple of Gen 2 as well. But this is a really, really fat team. This is Zapdos, Ferrothorn, Gliscor, Tentacruel, Bronzong, Alomomola, Mega Sableye, Quagsire. This is like a hard balanced semi-stall team. It has maybe the 2 most disgusting mons ever to exist. There's a Gliscor and Alomomola. Hate those Pokemon. Absolutely hate them. There's so much in the way of denial in this team. It's got really good hazard control with Zapdos has Defog. Ferrothorn obviously has Rocks and Spikes. Gliscor has Defog. Tentacruel has Rapid Spin. Bronzong has Rocks. Mega Sableye has Magic Bounce. There's so much in the way of controlling hazards on this team. And it is like a really, really bulky team. The issue with this team, and the reason I don't put it much higher, there isn't too much in the way of special attackers. I believe Zapdos will probably be one of the Z users, which will offer a little bit more offensive flexibility. But there isn't too much in the way of breaking other teams, which may make it difficult to beat other bulky balanced teams. It might just be a war of attrition versus a team like Alexis that we just saw. It's going to just be a war of attrition. Who bends first, you know. You're very reliant on Quagsire to stop setup sweepers. Once something Shell Smashes, on, I don't know, on Ferrothorn, if it can beat Quagsire, it can beat the rest of your team pretty much. Like you're going to struggle to beat it unless it's weak to Ice Shard from Weavile, obviously. If a setup sweeper has a grass move and can blast through Quagsire, you might have a bit of an issue there. Again, I'm sure you can play around that and you can find a way to make Quagsire work, or find something else to stop it. I mean, this team has so many options in terms of defense. Weavile is the main offensive threat and is very frail. It is weak to rocks. It's going to take full damage from spikes. It's weak to toxic spikes. It dies to pretty much any super effective hit in the game. It is your fastest Pokemon, your most offensive Pokemon. But it is really useful because it has that Pursuit Trap, which can be extremely handy in balanced and semi-stall teams. It does offer some utility defensively, but it is primarily there because it's fast and it hits hard. But it will go down pretty quickly, and in draft, when you never know what's packing a hidden power fighting, I think you do have to be careful with Weavile and make sure it doesn't just get bopped and your offensive plan goes out the window. Steve Wendy, the longest name in the West, Jean-Philippe. He's drafted a rain team. Full disclosure, I've drafted a rain team before. Didn't like it at all. Really hated building it. So maybe this team's better than I'm giving it credit for. I think rain is really hard to do well in draft. But he has a Thundurus Therian in the rain. That Thunder is really, really going to hurt. If you don't have an electric immunity, which we've seen some of these teams earlier, and I think later don't have, Thundurus hurts. It really, really, really stings. There aren't too many good switch-ins to that. Things like a Moongus are going to take it well. In fact, a Moongus is a really big issue for this team, so he'll have to find a way to play around that. Mega Sizzle in the rain obviously weakens that fire weakness it has. Mega Sizzle is always a really good wing con, but it's a really, really strong wing con with the rain up, and the way it interacts with things like Kingdra and Thundurus, it beats a lot of the Pokemon those two struggle with. Things like the bulky grass types. It can pretty much blast through a Moongus if needed with a like Swords Dance knockoff set, something like that. He has double priority as well. Obviously, Mega Sizzle's Bullet Punch, but shouldn't be forgotten that Light Noon has extreme speed. It has the belly drum as well. But as alluded to, Steve can run like a choice band extreme speed set, and he does have that double priority, which is pretty big when you have something like Kingdra in the Rain that really needs its speed. If somebody does decide to run a Trick Room team or just like stack up on priority, you have the counter priority that can beat it. The team could be quite reliant on Rain. It does have options outside of Rain, but there's not too many of them. Like a lot of these Pokemon are much better in the Rain. Kingdra, you can run Dragon Dance sets, but it does kind of it's kind of a shit tier 2 without the Rain up. Pelipper isn't useful, obviously, without the Rain. Things like Thundurus is obviously improved by the Rain. Tangrowth is improved by the Rain, but obviously can be a bit more useful outside of it. I don't know why he went with Slowking when he already has the Pelipper Kingdra. That's already 2 water types, probably a little bit one too many, I would say. And I say Rain teams can be very difficult to execute, and they can be a little bit linear, so he does need to be pretty careful, because it's quite obvious what he's trying to do with this team, I think. So you do need to be careful, and I think Rain teams can be difficult and quite predictable. So it's the reason it's kind of down low, but Thundurus and Scizor really decent in Rain, so it's not a bad team. Onkar, the unseen threat, Agawal, I don't know how it's pronounced. I'm sorry. I'm very English. This is another bulky-ish team. Feeny, Garchomp, Magnezone, bulky. Sylveon, bulky. Donphan, bulky. Jellicent, fat. Malamar's pretty bulky. Mega Pinsir doesn't go down easily on the physical side, at least. It's gone for a pretty typical Dragmag Pinsir. Magnezone will trap Celesteela, it'll trap Ferrothorn, it'll trap all these steel types that Mega Pinsir might have an issue with, it'll trap the steel types that Garchomp can't outrage through, it also resists the fairy types that Garchomp wants out of the way, and Pinsir probably wants out of the way, stuff like Clefable. He also has one of the strongest fairy types, or 2 of the strongest fairy types really, in Finny and Sylveon. It's a pretty nice core. He has some good tier 5 picks. I think Vivillon is really dangerous. Quiver Dancer, I think it's Sleep Powder as well. Malamar, I hate. Another Pokemon I hate. For whatever reason, always seems to do well against me. That Contrary Superpower cheese is nasty. On the negative side, his profile picture does scare me. Please change it. He has a lot of overlapping defensive typing. The 2 fairies and 2 waters, as I mentioned, Feeny and Sylveon. 2 of his specially defensive Pokemon share a typing. A Stab Sludge Bomb melts this team. Obviously, he has Magnezone, he has Salazzle, he has Donphan that resist it. But on the special side, Stab Thunderbolt, Stab Sludge Bombs, these hurt because he has Jellicent, Finny, and Sylveon. There's a lot of type overlap there. I think that's my biggest issue with this team. That his defensive Pokemon do tend to share weaknesses. Like, for example, a Stab Energy Ball hits Donphan, it hits Jellicent, it hits Tapu Fini, it hurts things like Garchomp, it hurts, he doesn't really have too many resists, and a lot of his defensive Pokemon share the same weaknesses, and that really worries me. He also isn't the fastest team. He has Mega Pinsir, which isn't slow, Garchomp isn't slow, but there's nothing that really outspeeds, say, a Latios without a Scarf. I think actually Salazzle I might be lying, but Salazzle has its own issues. It's frail. It doesn't hit that hard, Pinsir's very reliant on hazard removal. That does kind of make it. You put a lot of pressure on Tapu Fini, on Donphan to get rid of these rocks. Vivillon is also 4 times weak to rocks. It shares the exact same typing as Mega Pinsir. Another issue. So you're putting a lot of pressure on Donphan and Finny to get rid of these rocks, and most Donphan isn't a reliable spinner. Obviously, it has rapid spin, don't get me wrong, and it'll get it off, but it's quite easy to punish. Doesn't have reliable recovery. Tapu Fini's the same. Doesn't have reliable recovery. You can wear this team down. If you can get the rocks up in the late game, Pinsir's really going to struggle. And outside of Pinsir, I think this team struggles to get too many sweeps in. Next up, we have Ma, the Trickster Lee, Maurice, as you better known. A really unusual team. Is typical of the teams he builds, but it's very difficult to look at it and know what's happening. Mew Victini, very flexible Pokemon. Um, both base 100 in every stat, so you can run offensive, defensive. Victini has some amazing coverage um, on both the physical and special side, and V-Create will always be useful. It also has Mega Lopunny, which is just an amazing Pokemon. Ridiculously quick. It has Fake Out, Quick Attack, High Jump Kick, Ice Punch, Healing Wish if needed. Things like Power Up Punch. Like, there's so much it can do. And every set has different ways that you need to play around it. And often it's too late before you can. Against the bulkier teams where its speed isn't that useful, it can run the Power Up Punch sets. It can run more coverage based sets to hit more things super effectively. And like High Jump Kick is just always going to be a useful move when it has the ability it does. Like Mega Lopunny is just an amazing Pokemon in draft and will cover up a lot of weaknesses in terms of speed, in terms of wall breaking power that your team has. Not that this team necessarily has those. Ditto is really horrible to build against. One of the ways you would quite easily be able to beat this team is with setup sweepers, things that can outspeed Mega Lopunny after a speed boost. Ditto just comes in and says, no, none of that. It's really annoying to build around. Like, you have to always keep in mind, you have to think, if I set up, can Ditto Revenge kill me with my own moves? And if not, how can I kill me? You have to play some mind games with Ditto. It's really, really annoying, really restrictive to build around for the opponent. There is, however, a lot of type overlap. I mean, look at this type chart. 8 different types missing. There's no electric immunity. There's no bulky water. There's no steel. There's no fairy, unless I've missed something, which I don't think I have. There is a bulky dragon in Gudra, but there's no steel, no fairy, no electric type, no water type, no ground type. These are big types that are missing. There's a lot of overlap. Like your 2 big picks are both psychic type. You've got there was something else that I wanted to point out as well, and I can't remember what it was. Both Mega Lopunny and Persimmon, powerful hitters, fighting types. I just think there are pretty big type issues with this team. Once again, another team that's weak to Volt Turn, doesn't have too much in the way of controlling momentum. Persian Alola can, but it's weak to U-turn itself, so it's a bit of a double-edged sword there. You do have a decent defogger in Mew. I think Gudra might get defog as well, but I might be making that up. But you don't. Mew is also your rock setter, I believe. Aerodactyl has Taunt and Stealth Rock, which is nice. But there isn't too much in the way of hazard control. And yeah, your type coverage, not great. But Mega Lopunny and Ditto is so disgusting that I can't put this team too much lower. Earl, the Quiet Smith, doesn't talk too much, keeps himself to himself. Has the double priority in his tier 1 pick. Scizor, Dragonite, disgusting. Extreme speed on Dragonite, Bullet Punch and Scizor. There's not a whole lot you can do to outplay that. It's always going to go first. It's always going to hurt. Skarm itself, Skarmory will offer great hazard control. Everybody knows what Skarmory does. But it's pretty quick for a wall. Obviously has that massive base defense, massive base HP. Spikes, Stealth Rock, Defog, Whirlwind. You can run more offensive sets if you really want to. So much utility, and it is a bit like Foragers, one man hazard control. The Firewater Grass Core I really like. Celebi, Mega Houndoom, Primarina or Flareon. I think there's 2 Firewater Grass Cores, which are both pretty decent. Celebi is a really good pickup in draft. It can do so much, and as a Z move user, you really have to be careful of Celebi because that thing hurts a lot more than you expect generally. However, there is a lot of overlap. 2 of the big picks, Scizor and Skarmory, big fire weakness there. Both steel types that have pretty similar weaknesses, and you've also got Celebi, Rotom, which are weak to fire. So you do have to be careful there. Obviously, you have that double water, but you actually have 3 water users. I'm not really sure where you picked up Wishy Washy when you already had Swampert and Primarina. There's a lot of overlap in that, and I think that's what really tips me against the team. I love the Dragonite pick. I think it's really, really, really good in draft. obviously so bulky, has so many options in terms of the offensive moves it can run, and the way it can set up with weakness policy with Dragon Dance. I think it gets agility as well. It has a lot of different ways it can set up and a lot of different ways it can hurt you. But two fire types, two water types. Two fire types, three water types, two grass types. Lot of overlap. There's a lot of overlapping weaknesses. The team outside of the priority is not the quickest. Haunter, I think, is relatively quick, but I don't think it's that quick. Mega Houndoom's kind of quick, but it's outsped by, I think, anything upwards of 361 speed. Dragonite isn't that quick before a Dragon Dance. Celebi's base 100. Like, there is some speed issues there that can be exploited by some of the faster teams. So yeah, that's the reason it's not much higher up. But I do love the Dragonite pick. I like the Firewater. I like the emphasis on Firewater Grass. I think it's nice to have that base. My own team is impossible to switch into. That's what I wanted. I wanted momentum control. I wanted a team that was impossible to switch into. I wanted a team that was really hard to counter team. I've got momentum control. I have Thunderous Eye, Volt Switch, Staraptor, U-Turn, Pangoro, Parting Shot, a Mega Beedrill, powerful U-turns. There's a lot of momentum control. And if I can get a free turn on a Hooper, if I can get a free turn on a Gumshoe, if I can get a free turn on Dragalge, they're going to really, really hurt. Staraptor hurts. I have Sticky Webs and Defiant. Obviously, Smeargle can literally do anything, but its best use, usually, Sticky Webs. With and Thunderous Eye as a Z user, Defiant, really have to be careful. If you defog on that thing, its base attack isn't bad. You can run a Fly EMZ, you can run an Electro EMZ. It will dent something seriously hard. I also picked Clamperl, so there is that. That's pretty good. Pretty good Pokemon if you ask me. Appears to believe that hazard removal is for nerds. Yes, I do. I didn't think drafting too many defog users would be handy. It's not like I have a Mega Beedrill or a Thundurus that really needs these rocks removed. No, definitely not weak to rocks. Definitely don't need that whatsoever. I have Cryogonal, has Rapid Spin. I wanted Starmie, got stolen from me by Rudy. So I had to put him a little bit lower for stealing that from me. Not happy. Thundurus does have a priority defog, but it shouldn't really be what it's used for generally. There are glaring type issues. Again, no ground type. No steel type. Big issues. There's a lot of overlap. I think I got two normal type Pokemon and then a dark type. Three normal type Pokemon and then a dark type. A lot of fighting weaknesses. Hooper is obviously has that big bug weakness, and I think I only picked Clefable because it resisted bug and it resisted fighting, which was handy for the rest of my team. Feast or Famine team. This team is either going to smash you and you won't have a chance because I'll just control momentum, or you'll get rocks up, you'll get a free turn, and I'll just have to give up Pokemon over and over again. It's one of those teams that either smashes or gets smashed. It's kind of a hyper offense style build. There isn't too much in the way of defensive counterplay. I'm kind of relying on Clefable, Dragalge, Cryogonal. These aren't great defensive Pokemon. Kind of relying on them for defense, and there are big issues there. But I built it because it looks fun to me. It seems like a fun team to use. Hooper Unbound, disgusting Pokemon. Absolutely disgusting Pokemon. And Thunderous Eye and Gumshoes as he uses pretty strong. Gumshoes, I think people are going to be surprised by how hard that thing hurts. If I can get some free turns with it, it's going to do work. Onto the bottom three. As I say, these teams could be useful. They could be good. There almost certainly is something I'm missing with these teams. This is just my personal opinion. Don't take it too hard. Dan Fajardo. I don't know how it's pronounced. Again, I'm bad with names. I'm English. I'm uncultured. Latios, obviously a great pick. And Zorora, extremely fast. He has priority in Honchko's Sucker Punch. He has priority in Hitmontop's Mach Punch. So he does have ways of dealing with speed, and he has that really quick Zorora. It has Latios, which isn't slow as well, and can easily run Scarf. Is his Z user. He can beat other semi-stall teams. Nidoking is disgusting. Nidoking breaks stall teams. Latios with a Z move can break stall teams. I think Honchkrow is a really good wall breaker as well. Swords Dance Brave Bird sets, Swords Dance knockoff sets. These hurt. Comfy, Calm Mind Draining Kiss, good anti-balance mechanism. He has a speed control, he can beat other semi-stall teams. What are the issue? Doesn't have that many options offensively. Just mentioned a few of them, but against more offensive builds, he has Latios and Sorora. Nidoking's going to struggle against more offensive teams. Honch Crow, very reliant on Sucker Punch to beat offense teams. That can be played around. Substitute, for example, really is a real issue for this team when he's got things like Chauncey. He's got things like the Dustclops who are quite passive. Although they both have Nightshade and Seismic Toss, so maybe not too much of an issue. Might be a little bit too passive, as mentioned, the Chauncey, the Pyukumuku, the Hitmontop, the Dustclops. Don't really do too much damage. They can be a little bit easy to set up on, can be a bit too passive. I'm not a big fan of the more passive teams. Just really aids in general. Little bit of a subjective point, but Dustclops, Comfy, Pyukumuku Chance, it's just disgusting. Like, I don't know. Mega Aggron. I'm not a big fan of these Pokemon. Like, it's not quite as bad as the Gliscor Alamamola team in terms of just like aids to play against, but I don't know. Chauncey, Pyukumuku, Comfy, Hitmontop, Dustclops, Mega Aggron. It's just so. You know what I mean? Maybe this team's better than I'm giving it credit for. I probably am. I think it will struggle against the more offensive teams. But we shall see. Pyukumuku is such a good failsafe against those sort of teams, so maybe it'll be better than I'm expecting. That's why he's the wild card. Rudy the Bug Chaser, again, probably mispronouncing it. I only put Rudy, so I didn't mispronounce your first name. Good hazard control. Starmie. Amazing rapid spinner. Probably the best rapid spinner in draft. So that or X Cajole Starmie's quicker. I prefer that. Has Galvantula for those webs. Has Shuckle for rocks and webs. He has good hazard control. He has Volcarona and webs. Disgusting. Really difficult to play against. A Z Volcarona that is counter teaming you under webs. There's not a whole lot you can do, and he doesn't have a his defogger is a rapid spinner, so he doesn't get rid of his own webs. Has good hazard control in that sense. Under the webs as well, Heracross is a threat. Lucario is a threat. Suicune, disgusting Pokemon. Was his first pick, I believe. Absolutely vile Pokemon. It will beat some of these more stally teams if they are a little bit too passive. Suicune will smash him with a Calm Mind, Protect, Scold, or Rest, Talk, whichever set he chooses to bring. Disgusting anti-stall Pokemon and anti-offense if he wants it to be. I hate Suicune. I really hate building against it. But I think it's easier to build against it than it is to just come up against it in the ladder, because you're never going to be prepped for it in the ladder. But building against it, you do know it's coming. You can be a little bit more. You can have a little bit more tech. Strong priority. Lucario's extreme speed is one of the most powerful priorities. It also has Bullet Punch. So he does have that double priority on one mon. Golisopod as well, first impression. 90 base power priority move. Obviously has its issues, but can't forget that. Too many bugs is the biggest issue. There are 5 bug Pokemon on this team. 5. If the opponent does get rocks up, you're in trouble. Swoobat, Golisopod, Shuckle, Galvantula, Volcarona. These do not want rocks up. You have to bring Starmie every week. It has to spin. It has to get rid of these rocks, because otherwise you're in trouble. Powerful, like Terrakion just runs for this team. It really does. Terrakion is such a threat for this team. Tyranitar, like Scarf Tyranitar, really hurts this team. There are issues. It's not the quickest either. Starmie's pretty quick. Galvantula's pretty quick. You have the priority, but I don't know. I worry a little bit for this team. Even with, like, you have to have webs up. You have to keep rocks off. That's a lot of pressure to keep on this team. No electric immunity. As mentioned, Volt Sun really hurts this team. Volt Switch is only resisted by Galvantula, Druddigon, and Mega Altaria after it's megaed. Otherwise, Volt Switches are just going to have so much fun with this team. Think something like a Xurkitree, something like a Tapu Koko. They're gonna prey on this team. I know Rudy loves his bug types, but I can only call it as I see it. There's an issue with this team. And too much overlap, yeah. There's 3 water types, I think. 5 bug types. I just think he might do well with his team, but I don't think it's because he drafted a good team. I think it's probably because he's a good player. If he does do well. And finally, last, Victor Oblitas again, the professor. He picked Weedle. That is scary. Either he knows something I don't, or he is so like insane that he's decided to pick Weedle because I don't know, because he thinks he doesn't need another Pokemon. That scares me. That really does scare me. He has good type coverage. Salamence and Infernape have really good coverage themselves, and he's only missing Grass, Ice, Rock, Dragon. Ice, not a great defensive typing. Grass can be useful, but you have to get one of the good grass types. Rock, not really important. Dragon, little bit important, but you can live without it. Infernape and Salamence, much better in draft than they are in ladder play, because they do have 4 move slot syndrome, which is usually offset. In draft, I think those are 2 good picks, but it does really lack a marquee pick. It doesn't have a pick to build around. You see the other teams. You see like the Mega Charizard X teams built around that. Mega Gyarados built around that. Mega Lopunny built around that. Hooper Unbound in my team built around that. Kyro and Black doesn't have one of those. Has 2 utility style OU picks. And you even picked a lower tier Mega and then didn't get a 3rd tier 1, which gone for more tier 2, more tier 2s, Toxapex and Cresselia. Quite obvious what they're going to do, but obviously Toxapex, Cresselia are disgusting to play against. And I think Bisharp complements those 2 quite well in terms of the typing. But I do worry about I do worry about the overall power of this team. On the negative side, you literally picked Weedle, which whilst it does scare me, because I think you might know something I don't. If you don't know something I don't, you have just wasted a pick, because it has 4 moves. 4. There's no great hazard control. I believe Salamence gets Defog, not particularly useful. I think Mega Ordino might, but I'd have to check. I forgot to. I know it gets Screens and Healing Wish, which is nice. That's pretty cool. The obvious win con is Salamence. Outside of that, I'm not really sure how you win. You don't have a great way of abusing... I don't think you have a great way of abusing Bisharp's Defiant. You have a lot of fat Pokemon, and then you have like the Bisharp, Infernape, Salamence. So there is a good chance you can break the more balanced teams. I do worry about what you do against the sort of fat wall breaker type Pokemon, because things that can blast through a Gastrodon or a Snorlax, but also don't die to 1 hit from a Salamence or Infernape, they're really going to screw with you. One thing I will say is a positive is you do have Gastrodon, which is a really irritating Pokemon for teams like mine that rely on momentum control, because you can't Volt Switch on it, and it will just scold and toxic and just be a real irritant. I fucking hate Gastrodon, I'm not gonna lie to you. Really hate that Pokemon. You've gone with the Zebstrika. I love that pick. Not because it's good, just because I really like the Pokemon. I don't think it really does anything. It has really poor move pool, but I look forward to seeing what you can do with it. There's a reason you're called the Professor, and I'm excited to see some cool strats coming out of this this team that I don't really understand. Maybe it's great, and something I'm obviously missing. But that is the final team. That's everyone's gone through. I hope you appreciate. I've tried to be as fair as possible. I mean, I put myself at 13. If I was trying to be unfair, I'd probably put myself at like top 6 or something. I've tried to be as fair and as fair and balanced as possible. I hope you don't mind your rating. If you do, just call me an idiot or something. I don't care. Thank you very much. Cheers.